Welcome to Sawdust and Cornbread. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm feeling a little bored. Today's video may look a little different and sound a little different. That's because my old computer, my 14-year-old Old Faithful computer that was handed to me by someone else, has decided it's time to retire. So while I'm waiting on the new backup to come, I'm going to be recording a few videos on the phone. This is just my regular cell phone, so it may look a little different, sound a little different, but the information is just as good. What I'll be doing is creating a nautical shelf to go on the wall above my computer here in my workspace, and I'm going to be using one of the pickets off of my fence, one of the dog ear pickets that needs to be replaced. And there are so many uses for wood that has been outside. It just needs to be cleaned really well, but you can do all kinds of things. So this is just one idea of what you can do. If you notice, there's a couple of boards missing here behind me. Now this isn't a video about repairing your fence. However, I am going to tell you what you can do with those old boards that need replacing. Don't throw them out. You don't even need to make them into kindling. You can repurpose those boards, because if you look closely, they're rustic, weathered, worn, nautical, farmhouse. There's so many things you can do with old fence boards. If you don't have any, I bet your neighbors do. And if they don't have any, the hardware store has them for just a few dollars. The first thing you're going to want to do with your old boards, once you get them off the fence, is remove all of the nails if there's any in there. Don't worry about the nail holes, they just add character. Then you're going to want to give them a thorough scrubbing. What I did is I went outside and put my hose on the jet setting, sprayed the board off top to bottom, the sides, and then flipped it over, did the same thing on the back, gave it a good strong stream of water just to blast all of the outside crud off. And because we don't want to take any of that crud inside our house, it's a good idea to get a stiff bristled brush. I got a stiff plastic bristled brush, added some liquid dish soap and gave it a good scrubbing, top to bottom, sides, back to front, flipped it, did the same thing, just to make sure I got all of the crud off. Quite satisfying to see what comes off of these boards, and it's reassuring to know that's not coming inside your house. Then one more good rinsing is in order with that high pressure jet just on my garden hose, and then I'm going to set it outside overnight. It's actually right here below us. I'm going to set it outside overnight, let the sun hit it tomorrow, flip it, dry it thoroughly before we can begin any projects. To show you how this is going to work, I have my back piece that's going to go across the wall behind my bottom piece so that I have the full length of that to use to set things on. There's going to be a hinge here, and that's going to connect this back piece to the front piece and add a little bit of character. And the way that the shelf actually stays open is I'm going to take the twine, I'll be drilling a hole into this back piece and a hole into this bottom piece, and that will be attached, so that's actually what is going to hold it open and in place once it's on the wall. When determining how far over to put the hole, you want to take in consideration, you want to have enough distance to where the edge of your hole isn't too close to the side, because you want it to be in there nice and secure, but you also don't want to take up too much of the real estate that you're going to sit objects on. So I say about 1/2 inch to maybe 1 inch in on the bottom piece and the top piece. That way you're reserving your real estate here, but you're also going to have a secure, tight fit for your rope. You can drill both the holes on one side at one time, but making sure everything is lined up nice and neat, stack it on top of each other. Measure your 1 inch back here, and then I'm going to drill the hole there all the way through, so that'll be the holes on this side, and then I'll repeat the same thing on the other end. So we have our holes drilled on this end and the far end that you can't see down there of the board for our ropes to go through, which will make that connection to create the triangle. But I want to show you how to do the hinges. You'll notice that there's different screws here. That's because I used a stash of screws. You're not going to see them, so it doesn't matter. No reason to buy new screws. But I put part of my hinge is on top of the board to my left. The right part on my right over here goes under the board. So we've got one on top, one on under. That way when you fold it up, it makes the perfect L. Okay, I wanted to show you, it's a little hard to see from this angle. You're looking, this is the back of the shelf that would go on the wall. This is the bottom of the shelf, so I would be sitting things under here. So essentially it's upside down. And if you can see, there is a gap. I can stick my finger in here. Where the board is warped, that's because it was outside. You're gonna have to deal with things like that. So to add a little bit more stability and to help line that up, I am going to add this little angle bracket. It's just a scrap that I had. I don't know if you can see this. There we go. It's just a scrap that I have. You can find these at your hardware store for a little bit of nothing. And I'm going to put that right here in the center of my shelf. And it's going to pull that down and make it more secure, for one, so that the rope doesn't have so much tension on it. But it's also going to take care of this gap. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now that I have the screw in on the bottom here, I'm going to flip it over, and I can put another supporting screw right here in this side. Alright, so that's going to hold it nice and tight. Now that we have the hinges secure on both sides, our little support bracket in the middle, it's time to thread our rope through our holes to finish it up. I wanted to show you what I ended up using as the rope. It is this jute rope. It's very nautical looking. I had some, it actually came off of a broken lamp that I had. And it's about 1/2 inch in diameter. And for my boards are 5.5 inches wide both ways here. I ended up using 14 inches. So the only thing with jute rope or any kind of rope that's braided or twisted is you have these ends, they're going to come apart, and that's no bueno when you want it to hold in position, because it's actually going to go in this hole and we don't want it to fray and come undone. So what we're going to do in one end, a little trick that you can do with any kind of rope, is put some wood glue on one end of it and then twist it together. Then find a piece of scrap metal. This is just thin sheet metal. They have like rolls of this that you use to hold your pipes up with, that kind of thing. It's very thin, very flexible, something like that. So after you put your wood glue on there, take it and put it around the end, and just take your pliers, squeeze it together, and I'll show you what that does. Once you crimp it together, it's gonna hold your piece together nice and neat like that, so that it won't come unfrayed. And that also makes it much easier when you're ready to put it through your hole, so you're not having to deal with pieces going everywhere. That's also gonna play a part in holding it into the back piece here. So I'll show you that right now. One end, you're gonna have your crimp. The other end is not going to be crimped. What you're going to do is, as closely as you can to the end, is tie just a good old-fashioned knot. Some people may know nautical knots, maritime, navy knots. I wish I did. That's something I want to learn. But for now, I'm just going to do a good old, I think it's called a granny knot. Just a plain old knot. And that's going to hold it in the bottom to keep it from coming through once I pull it. So let's go ahead and feed that through the bottom. Here's my bottom piece, but I want to show you what I'm doing, so I'm going to pull that out. Okay, so my knot stuck it underneath. Now I'm going to take this and go through my back piece. Okay, now we're on the back side. This is our little crimped piece that we pulled through that's still attached to our rope. And all that I'm doing is taking my pliers and I'm going to flatten that out and make it really wide. Wider than my hole, so that you cannot easily pull that out. You just want it to stick there in place. Pull it up through the bottom and straight through the back. Pull it tight, then get your pliers and you're going to flatten the back. And that's it. You're ready to mount your shelf. Now that your shelf's all together and ready to mount, you need to think about ways to mount it, and there's various ways you could do that. You could do the sawtooth blades on the back that you hang up on a nail. You could run a wire and hang it from a nail on the wall. I always prefer, if possible, to drive whatever I'm putting in the wall when it's going to support any kind of weight, whether it be this shelf or the coat rack that I did in a previous video. You need to check that one out if you haven't. That's a great project. I always like to attach it directly to the stud. I'm going to use this handy little stud finder to find my stud. So it's going to be right there on one side, right here. And as easy as that, the shelf is mounted and ready to go. It can't get easier or cheaper. Using an old fence board and a little imagination, you can have the rustic farmhouse or coastal shelf that you've always wanted using the things you have.